thank Stephanie Rawlings-Blake, the Mayor of Baltimore, for her extraordinary leadership in Baltimore City and her leadership to make sure that every eligible voter has the opportunity to make sure that his or her vote is cast and counted by November 6th. I say by November 6th because we've already started.
That's right.
People have already started voting by mail. We will do the early voting starting Saturday through November 1st, and then, of course, November 6th. And we want to make sure that everyone who's entitled to vote has that opportunity to cast that ballot and make sure that ballot is counted. We say that because we've seen practices in the past in Maryland. It brings back memories of 6 years ago. Just about at this time in the campaign cycle, one of my campaign workers brought up this piece of literature that was handed out back then. You can imagine the surprise when I found out that people who had endorsed me were included in a brochure that was mailed out. Prominent African Americans that had endorsed my candidacy were listed as endorsed my opponent. That was absolutely false. It was meant to confuse minority voters in our state, and it should have had no place in politics in our state or any place in this nation. We've seen, we saw 4 years ago, and you see the transcript there of that famous robocall that was instituted by one of the candidates in an effort to keep Democrats from voting. It was a direct effort to stop people from participating. And unfortunately, in the last couple of years, we've seen many states, about 2/3, pass laws to actually make it more difficult for people to cast their ballots. And those laws are aimed at individuals who are more likely to vote for Democrats. They target minorities, they target older people, they target students, they target people with disabilities to make it more difficult for these people to be able to vote. Now, fortunately in Maryland, that has not happened, because we got great legislators like Sandy Rosenberg, who has actually made it easier for people to vote in our state, which is what we should be doing. We thank him, we thank Governor O'Malley, thank Peter Francho for his leadership in that regard. We've made progress to make sure, but there are still practices that have happened in our state of Maryland. As I said, what happened in my election 6 years ago. As a result of that, I worked with my seatmate in the United States Senate, a senator by the name of Barack Obama. The two of us worked together on a voter fraud legislation. And we brought it up to make sure that this type of literature that's aimed at confusing minority voters would have no place, in fact, would be a violation of our criminal statute. And the Justice Department is now much more aggressive in dealing with those types of issues. I've introduced legislation in this Congress to protect against voter suppression activities. We're making progress. But I tell you, we are concerned. We are concerned that there will be dirty tricks that our Republican opponents are going to be using. They've used it in the past, and we're concerned about it today. Our view is we want everybody to vote, whether they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, regardless of how they're going to vote. We want to make sure they have an opportunity to vote. And that is our goal, to make sure every vote counts. So we have information here for the voters. Our website is mddems.org/voter protection. In order to be able to get information, the number is 1-888-678-VOTE. There you can get information as to where you vote. You can also report if you're having difficulty getting your vote counted, whether it's before Election Day when you're trying to get your ballot by mail, or you're having a problem at an early vote site, or on Election Day if you find the machines aren't working on time, or they're not open, or you can't get the vote. We want to make sure that you have an opportunity to do that. Or if you see activities that are aimed at trying to suppress your vote. We know in Maryland, we've seen literature that's been handed out that gives the wrong information for people voting. Tells people that if you have a parking ticket, you might be arrested. We don't want to see any of that. We also know there's been tactics used to try to intimidate people from voting. We don't want any of that to take place. Our real champion on this is Congressman Elijah Cummings. He has stood up on the House of Representatives to Darrell Issa, who is the the Republican chair who has tried to use the power of his office to intimidate voters. Elijah Cummings has been the leading voice in the House to make sure people know that that type of activity will not be tolerated. I'm proud of his work and does a great job representing the people of the 7th Congressional District, Elijah Cummings.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much.